A luxurious foreign car stopped in front of the city hospital morgue, and a young, imposing man stepped out. It was clear that he was there because of a tragedy. Dressed in black, his eyes were probably filled with tears, hidden behind dark sunglasses. His demeanor showed that he had faced great misfortune. Burying a grandfather is one thing, but someone so young. Yes, the rich also cry. Simon Morris had come to collect the body of his fiancée, Rosa, who had recently passed away suddenly, with no known cause. It was no wonder he was so shaken. He could hardly believe that his beloved had died suddenly, almost on the eve of their wedding. He had already made the identification, spoken with the investigator, and answered questions about what could have happened to a young woman so happy and full of life. But what could he know, being in such despair? Barely holding back tears, he struggled to speak. This simply cannot be. We saw each other the day before, and everything was fine. No, she didn't complain about anything, just being tired, but she has been frequently tired lately. She was even planning to see a doctor, but promised to go after the wedding. She wasn't depressed, nor did she have suicidal thoughts. The investigator continued questioning him. What are you talking about? We were so happy. What am I supposed to do now? You know I don't care anymore about the cause of Rosa's death, because nothing can be fixed, lamented the inconsolable fiancé. Perhaps she had enemies. After all, Rosa was wealthy, the head of a large fortune, and the owner of a company. What enemies could she have? Besides, nothing is missing, neither money nor valuables. Everything is in place except for her. And Simon, unable to contain himself, broke down and cried. The investigator realized it was cruel to continue interrogating a man who had suffered such a heavy loss, and let him go. The case could be closed. The girl simply died of heart failure. Sad, but it happens. What can be done? Simon entered the morgue, which was empty at that moment, and was greeted by an attendant, a large figure whose face suggested he had served time in prison. The tattoos on his arms and chest confirmed it. Someone with another background would hardly accept such a job. Simon greeted the man, noticing they were alone, wiped away his tears, and adopted a businesslike demeanor. So, where's the body? He asked. There's a lot of work, the attendant laughed. I arranged everything as you requested, so you can take your fiancée and do what you want. Take her to the cemetery if you wish. Did you come alone? Yes, alone. Bury her without ceremony. She has no relatives, and her friends can remember her as they wish. But wait, what do you mean by bury? Are we supposed to handle the burial too? Who else is going to do it? You have your men here, just do everything properly. I've already bought the plot, the grave is dug. You just need to lower her and cover her well. We know our job, but you'll have to pay both for the work and the silence. Oh, leeches. I'll pay extra, there's no choice. Just do it quickly to avoid questions, and then take a photo of the grave and send it to me. Understood. Are you going to say goodbye? Get lost. You're used to this, but I can't stand to see corpses. Do it yourselves. Agreed. I handled everything well, didn't I? Yeah, thanks to you, I couldn't have done it alone. And so they resolved the matter, not knowing that the deceased, already placed in the coffin, had regained consciousness. She began to feel and hear things while being prepared for the funeral, but it couldn't be said that she had fully returned. She heard everything, understood everything, but couldn't move a finger, make a sound, or take a deep breath. Rosa lay as she was placed by indifferent hands, not understanding what was happening. She couldn't move due to the effects of the substances Simon had poisoned her with. And there was no doubt that he had done it, there was no one else. Why? The reason was clear: money. This happened when he suggested saying goodbye to their single lives. He was sweet and helpful that last night. The white wine had a strange taste, and Simon insisted that she drink it all. "This is the best wine. I bought 3 cases for our wedding, paid a fortune. Drink, you'll feel a wonderful aftertaste." She did. Not immediately. She remembered well how Simon left, not understanding why he looked at her so strangely. After he left, she felt a terrible weakness, numbness in her hands and feet. What did he mix in? Sleeping pills? Some drug? And what would happen to her now? They were about to bury her. How could this be possible? No, it couldn't be true. She needed to do everything possible to let someone know she was still alive. At least the gravediggers, even if it resulted in her death. The important thing was not to be buried alive. While these thoughts raced through the girl's mind, the attendant searched for those who would be responsible for burying Rosa. The hospital was on the outskirts of the city, with the cemetery right behind it. So, the dead were carried by family members or transported by the staff. In this case, there was no one. "Marcelo. Where are you? Get Andre and start the work, there's a burial to do." "Andre's not here. He's been drunk for 2 days, how am I supposed to do this alone?" protested the young gravedigger. "Will there at least be some relatives present?" "There won't be anyone, no men, no women, no funeral. Just pure pleasure, no one will be around to interfere or give advice, and you'll get double the pay. Think about it. The deceased is young and light, you'll be able to move her and bury her alone, and then take a photo of the grave. Here, I'll give you triple the pay. You're all vultures, real bloodsuckers. Let me help you put her on the gurney and get on with it." Marcelo wasn't a vulture, although money was an urgent issue for him. Otherwise, a young economics student wouldn't have chosen this job, but he needed to do it when his mother fell seriously ill. She begged him not to drop out of school, and he didn't want to either. But Helena needed money for treatment, and he needed to find a job. "What can I do, Mom?" "All students work part-time," he reassured her, hiding where he worked. A friend's father got him the job of a gravedigger through connections, and Marcelo accepted, understanding that he could earn much more in this position than by putting up posters or washing dishes in a cafe. There were no other options, so he became a gravedigger. The work wasn't for the faint-hearted, but Marcelo had a strong psyche. He tried not to take seriously what was happening around him, although some colleagues advised him, "Marcelo, you won't last long in this job without drinking. That's why we end up drinking, so don't be stubborn, drink with us." Marcelo refused, earning the respect of his colleagues. Why would he drink? He was a student, he would graduate and become someone. There was nothing special about the work. Someone had to bury the dead, they couldn't stay in the middle of the road. Others defended him. Marcelo wasn't afraid of becoming an alcoholic. He never liked alcohol, neither for comfort nor for fun. Although the work was hard, both physically and mentally, and even understanding its necessity, it seemed shameful. "And if someone I know sees me? Rumors will start, and my mother will find out." So he not only changed clothes for work, but also tried to alter his appearance. He bought a thick beard at a theater shop, and when he went to his grim work, it brought a certain flair. And today, one of the employees was off, his partner was drinking, so he had to handle the burial alone. "These are strange funerals," they said. There's a young woman in the coffin, but no relatives or acquaintances. What to make of it? Maybe she was a very bad person, whom no one wanted to know, or she was sick, and everyone had been expecting her death for years, or alone? Strange, of course, but that wasn't his concern. Marcelo didn't know, and would never know. After pushing the gurney to the already dug grave, thanks to Andre, who helped dig it before he started drinking, Marcelo carefully removed the coffin, not so heavy, and placed it on the ground. There was a slight rustling sound from inside. It seemed the coffin was too big, and the deceased had moved slightly. How am I going to lower her alone? Marcelo thought, frustrated. Whoever she was, it wasn't right to simply throw her in there. Meanwhile, Rosa was desperately trying to signal to the person about to bury her alive. She was alive, but couldn't move, nor separate her stiff lips. She managed to open her eyes, which gave her hope that her other limbs would also start moving, as long as it wasn't too late. She was really going to be buried now. Her brain was sending signals to her arms and legs, but they didn't move. It seemed that the tips of her fingers were starting to twitch, but what good would that do? The coffin was already being moved, probably about to be pushed into the grave, and that would be the end. Yes, the boards destined to be her eternal bed were tilted. Her body slid inertly against them, her head bumping into the lid. What was that? Her throat seemed to wake up, and a faint moan escaped her closed lips, but it was too low to be heard, especially by the man outside, who was busy with his task. The dirt and small stones scraped and rustled under the coffin. Then the coffin dropped to the bottom of the grave. The girl's head jerked and hit the bottom with a dull thud, which awakened Rosa. Her mouth finally opened, and she managed to let out a scream that proved she was alive. Marcelo froze in horror at the sound of the scream coming from the coffin. Have I overworked? No, it must have been my imagination. The coffin creaked. Luckily, it didn't fall apart. He tried to reassure himself, a corpse, whose death should have been confirmed by doctors, can't just come back to life, and the pathologist must have performed an autopsy. Even so, a chill ran down his spine, and it seemed the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He sat on the edge of the grave, catching his breath. Silence. Yes, of course, it was just my imagination. I should see a psychiatrist. I need to bury this quickly and get out of here. Then, another moan, much clearer, came from below. This couldn't be dismissed as an illusion. Marcelo jumped into the grave and asked, "Are you alive?" knowing how foolish it sounded. There wasn't a coherent response, but the moans spoke for themselves. Marcelo struggled, breaking his nails to open the coffin lid, and gasped. A young woman looked at him with eyes full of horror and despair. "You're alive," Marcelo murmured again. "We need to get out of here. You probably need a doctor." He really didn't know what to do, so he suggested the most practical thing, "Let me help you out." "Water," the girl whispered when they got out. Luckily, Marcelo had water with him. He always brought some, knowing it would be hard to find a drink at the cemetery. He brought the bottle to the girl's lips, and she drank eagerly, almost finishing half a liter at once. Marcelo took the bottle away. "You can't drink too much at once." "Who did this terrible thing to you?" The girl, after drinking, began to regain her strength, but wasn't in a hurry to answer his questions. She raised her face, looked at the clear sky, and closing her eyes, whispered, "What happiness," and let her head fall weakly on Marcelo's shoulder. "Yes, you're alive," he agreed, confused and not knowing what to do next. "You probably need to go to the hospital." "How did this happen?" "It's simple. Someone wanted to kill me and tried to poison me, but it didn't work. Then let's go to the police. I don't want to go anywhere, neither to the police nor to the hospital. I don't want him to know I'm alive. Marcelo noticed that she still had her head resting on his shoulder, not out of affection, but out of weakness. She needed a doctor, and the police needed to be involved. Did she really want to let the aggressor go unpunished? Did you forgive him? He asked. No, I don't want him to escape, and he has every chance to do so, she whispered. He will need proof that you're dead, and then we can act with a clear conscience. A doctor will take samples, find out what was used to poison you, write a report, and the police will open a case. I'm a witness, I'll go to the police with you. You urgently need to see a doctor. It's clear you're not well. He quickly buried the empty coffin, took a photo, and sent it to his boss as proof that the job was done. Now he needed to decide what to do with the girl who had come back to life. Simon, upon receiving the photo of his fiancée's grave, was overjoyed. He had executed everything brilliantly and perfectly. That young fool instantly believed in his love, and now he could relax. What could be better than marrying the heir to a substantial fortune, especially when she was young and attractive? There was no denying that. He could have married Rosa, taken control of her and her money, and lived a wonderful life, but there were several obstacles, the main one being Maria Warren. He couldn't say he really loved this woman, but she fascinated him. Simon felt that with her he would find happiness. No, she wasn't young and beautiful like Rosa. She worked as the head of a department at the farm that belonged to the deceased father. Of course, her fortune wasn't as large as Rosa's, but the prospects were much more attractive. Money was good, of course, no one would argue that, but money had a way of running out. He himself had been an orphaned heir since he was young, still in his first year of college, and knew very well how quickly money could disappear. He barely finished college when he was practically penniless, selling his possessions. Now that he seemed like an adult, it didn't matter, his addiction was incurable and only worsened with age. So, Rosa's money would disappear as quickly as his father's, and what would be left? A wife, even if beautiful and loving, wouldn't be loved by him, and she was one of those women who wouldn't be easy to get rid of. Besides, she would undoubtedly start having children immediately, which meant guaranteed extra burdens. With Maria, everything would be different. She knew how to make money and could keep him under control. Secretly, Simon longed for someone to keep him under strict control. Yes, with her, he wouldn't stray, she would get what she wanted and pull him out of the hole he was falling into. This wasn't a Rosa, sensitive and pleading. Living with someone like Rosa would make him want to get involved in anything, just to avoid going home. Even during the courtship, it was hard for him to pretend to be in love. He could have taken his time with the elimination, first marrying her and then, later, but several circumstances prevented that, the main one being Maria. She seemed to be in love with Simon and had serious plans for him. She was also very jealous. She didn't consider it a major flaw that her man was apparently courting another girl, on the contrary, she fully supported the plan, understanding its purpose. Moreover, she was always aware of what was happening. Each meeting took place with her knowledge and according to her script, and then everything was discussed in detail. Simon didn't find this humiliating, especially since it reassured him about the intelligence and shrewdness of his beloved. I hope it doesn't bother you that I continue this relationship. I assure you it brings me no pleasure, he said after such discussions. Stop it, don't be silly, Maria laughed. I understand everything and know it's all for our future. I think you wouldn't like it if I started a similar game, but I hope, thanks to the success of our venture, I won't need to do that. Simon was scared, but when he mentioned that Rosa was expecting a quick wedding, Maria became serious and thoughtful. Then, she said in an unusually severe tone, "This must be avoided. I'm not really interested in that. I mean, I don't want that at all. But think carefully, why else would we need all this?" Simon was surprised. "Everything can be done without marriage and without Rosa," she explained. Then, the plan to eliminate the girl began to be discussed. Maria suddenly started pushing him towards this decision sooner, and although he might have been horrified at first, he soon calmly thought that the only way out was Rosa's death. Realizing this made the meetings with her even less tiresome, and there didn't seem to be any great sin in what he was about to do, especially since Maria had said not to waste words. "I understand that, Maria, but how can I inherit everything if I'm not legally her husband?" Simon was puzzled. "I don't want to completely disappoint you, but I see you've decided to do this. Or do you really want to marry that woman? If that's the case, say so without hesitation. I don't mind, but remember, I don't get involved with married men. That's my principle." "Sorry," she replied coldly, not trying to convince him of anything. "No, Maria, of course not," Simon mumbled. "Then what are we talking about?" She raised an eyebrow in surprise. "I'm talking about something else. If I'm not married to her, how can I inherit anything?" Simon really didn't understand this. "And how long do you plan to stay married to her to inherit her fortune? 5 years or 25? No, of course not, but how long would I need to be married for that?" He had no idea and thought of eliminating his wife almost immediately after the wedding, but Maria explained the impossibility of that situation. "I don't know how long it takes to inherit, but a year is clearly not enough to avoid a prison sentence." 1 year, Simon, you would stay with her for 1 year, while I act as the mistress of a married man, meeting him secretly? I've already said that's not part of my plans. So, you'll have to hurry so as not to end up in prison with no inheritance at all. Can you imagine how deeply the investigators will dig when they find out that a newly married young woman, wealthy, left a significant inheritance and died suddenly? They'll investigate everything thoroughly, and no money will save you. Think about it. As for forgetting everything she had, leave it to me, I'll find a solution. I work with her and know more than she or anyone else. No one will suspect anything." Maria assured him that she could handle everything. All he had to do was one simple thing: mix what Maria had provided into Rosa's food or drink. "Don't worry, it's a safe method, no autopsy will show anything, and there won't be an autopsy, I'll take care of that," she said. With her by his side, nothing was scary, everything was clear and simple. It was foolish to be afraid. With a woman like that by his side, he didn't feel fear. Everything went as planned, and he had reason to be proud of how well he portrayed despair in front of the investigator, who didn't even ask many questions. After all, why bother a man who wanted to marry but had his fiancée, a young, beautiful woman, die suddenly without any apparent reason? There was no reason to sympathize with someone like that, and it seemed he wouldn't gain anything from her death. So, why question him? But as a grieving fiancé, he didn't fail. Sometimes he even felt offended that he couldn't boast about the success of the plan he had executed so well. You can't just go to someone and say, "See how I handled all this." Only Maria understood well. They had done everything together. She was the mastermind behind it, but he also played an important role. No one could say he stood on the sidelines while his beloved took care of their future. That's what he thought as he looked at the photo of the mound where Rosa lay forever. Did he feel sorry for her? In a way, yes, although it could also be seen another way. He didn't so much destroy her as perhaps saved her from the troubles that awaited her with a character like hers. If it weren't for him, Simon, perhaps some other opportunist would have gone after her wealth, leaving her with nothing. What awaited that girl? And what would she have left with her beauty and youth? Besides, her beauty was the kind that would quickly fade. She also wanted children, not just one, but preferably more than two. She had mentioned it. How would she fare after the third child? And she was too trusting, too naive. People would deceive her at every turn. It was clear that living in peace and contentment with a character like that was unlikely, and she wasn't prepared for any other life. The only daughter of a rich man, obviously, she was used to everything first class, but her father had died. So, no one was there to take care of her, especially now that she was alone. So, yes, it was a pity, but what could be done? The most important thing now was for Maria's plan to work, so that Rosa's fortune could be easily acquired. Simon still didn't know exactly what Maria planned, but he trusted her. They didn't know, but while they were thinking about it, the prematurely deceased Rosa was already sitting in the investigator's office, preparing a statement against him. She refused to go home until everything was clarified, and Marcello had to take her to his small apartment, shared with his mother, Helena. Rosa and Helena met and grew close. Helena felt a lot of sympathy for the orphaned girl in such a terrible situation, and Rosa found in Helena an older friend she could trust. Marcello's mother also believed that the criminal needed to be exposed as soon as possible. Tests were done, and the doctors had already determined the cause of the girl's poisoning. The relevant report was included in the case. Marcello took Rosa to the police as a witness, and soon all those involved in the crime were being questioned, including Simon, shocked by the unraveling of his successful plan. Under the weight of the evidence, he had to confess what he had done. The only thing he concealed was Maria's involvement, partly because he still loved her, but also because she was his only close person. With friends and acquaintances turning away and no more relatives, Simon was alone, and no one else wanted to deal with him after what he had done. Who else besides Maria would support him through all the years in prison? And maybe she would find him after his release. If that happened, there was hope that he wouldn't stray from her. If Maria were also implicated, he would be completely alone. So, he didn't even mention her name. She remained completely distanced from the crime, but her anger was uncontrollable. Yes, she was grateful to Simon for not betraying her, but failing in such a plan? He must have miscalculated the dose, but even so, something could have been done. It wasn't just him. Maria failed in every aspect. First, she hoped that after Rosa's death, she would not only inherit the entire fortune but also the company. She had the power to do that and had already invested a lot of money to bring the plan to fruition. Second, she hoped to finally stabilize her personal life. Yes, she was a little older than Simon, already past 30, and every woman knows that's a significant milestone. Then, Simon appeared in her life. He was exactly the kind of husband she could only dream of, docile, obedient, and eager to be controlled. The kind of man every ambitious businesswoman desires. They would have lived happily ever after, and he would have been grateful to her until the end of his days. And now, no husband, no money, no company, so much effort was put into this, and all because of whom? That spoiled girl, whose only merit was being born with a silver spoon in her mouth? It's not hard to get everything with a father like that. Maria, coming from nothing, had to fight all her life to achieve something, and she fought and succeeded, but now look at this, that girl couldn't even die, even with help. But Maria wasn't going to give up. She decided she would still take revenge on her rival, ensuring she ended up with nothing. Of course, Rosa had no idea about these plans. After fully recovering from what happened, she was happy as someone who feels reborn. She hadn't just been threatened, she had been on the brink of death, and now she was alive. She could enjoy every moment, every sip of water. Moreover, she found a family for the first time in a long while. Rosa and Marcelo talked a lot, sharing their stories, which inevitably led them to fall in love. Upon discovering that Marcelo was studying economics, she convinced him to leave his unpleasant job as a gravedigger and join her company. She needed a reliable assistant, especially since there was clear discontent in the office, sometimes causing serious problems. Marcelo agreed, especially since the salary offered was much higher than what he earned as a gravedigger. Additionally, Rosa offered a substantial advance, which finally allowed him to pay for Helena's surgery. He wanted to refuse, but Rosa said, "Please, Marcelo, understand that I'm not doing this for you, but for your mother. I've grown to love her, she's become dear to me. So why not help her? Even if you refuse, the surgery will still be done." Marcelo didn't argue. He wanted his mother to be well, but he also wanted to succeed at work. So, he dived deep into the complexities of the business. He did it discreetly, efficiently, without drawing attention. No one could say that the boss's new boyfriend was there to cause trouble. If anyone suggested that Marcelo was hired just because he knew the boss and was helped in some way, he would have resigned immediately. However, no one mentioned it, as his colleagues recognized the hard work of the young man. He was the first to discover Maria's plans, realizing she intended to harm Rosa and possibly take full control of the company's assets. Upon making this discovery, he immediately exposed her actions. Moreover, he uncovered her involvement in all the events. This wasn't surprising. The company's employees, if they didn't know for sure, suspected that Maria had some connection with Rosa's ex-fiancé. It might not have been a romance, but they clearly interacted a lot. Someone even hinted that they were related, but Marcelo understood that wasn't the case. It seemed the department head wasn't as interested in Rosa's money, but rather in taking revenge on her for something. He confronted Maria directly. "I know you were somehow connected with Simon and probably knew about his plans, maybe even participated. Isn't it enough that you ruined my reputation and that your lover is trying to fire me with a tarnished record? But now you're also trying to implicate me in criminal troubles? What I had with Simon is none of your business, and you won't be able to prove anything you suspect. And if you decide to talk too much, remember that I have ways to fight back." This threat sounded so weak and desperate that Marcelo just smiled. "Okay, calm down. I won't talk, and I know very well that it will be impossible to prove anything, unless your lover decides to open up. Which doesn't seem to be the case, as he still has plans for you. But know that your guilt in the attempted sabotage has already been discovered, and you'll have to deal with it for as long as necessary. I'll give you time, but we'll see how you handle it, your Don Juan. You think you can keep relying on the fact that you saved Rosa by accident?" Marcelo didn't even pay attention to that angry accusation and left the office. Maria was quietly dismissed, but her reputation was tarnished for a long time, perhaps permanently. Marcelo was promoted to her position, but to take over as department head, he needed to complete his studies. However, that didn't worry him, he was happy. He and Rosa were in love and planning to get married after his graduation. Moreover, his mother had successfully undergone surgery and was recovering quickly. So, for people who had faced such a traumatic experience, things were going very well. In fact, they were great, and the future promised only happiness. As for Simon, things weren't going so well for him. He was convicted and sent to prison, where he would spend many years. Rosa wasn't the only one who had underestimated him. Maria, cunning and enterprising, did so as well. Although he was a dedicated gambler, his luck was scarce most of the time. He tried to improve his financial situation, initially with Maria's help. However, he quickly realized that she didn't have much to offer and turned his attention to Rosa, young, confident, much wealthier. Everything went according to plan for him. He was about to fulfill his dreams, especially getting rid of his debts. Who could have imagined that Rosa would prove to be so resilient? He should have been more careful, perhaps he should have influenced her more. Now he was in prison. Although it was a terrible situation, he felt a certain relief. I mean, of course it was bad, but at least he was protected, at least temporarily, from creditors. However, he discovered that prison wasn't complete isolation. The same creditors had influence there, especially in the underworld. Shortly after the trial, a serious underworld figure approached Simon again, transferring his debts to him and demanding payment with double the amount. "How can I pay while I'm here?" Simon protested. "That's your problem now," was the response. "If you want to serve your sentence in peace, pay. Otherwise, don't worry, no one will kill you. But you might face consequences, as life here can become quite difficult." Simon thought quickly and found a way out. The next day, he approached the same man and declared, "I don't have money and won't get any, but I know where you can get much more." He provided information about Rosa's assets, knowing exactly where to find money and valuables. He laid out a detailed plan and wished them good luck. "I hope everything goes well for you, because I don't have other plans and can't conjure money out of thin air," he said with a touch of audacity. This information about Simon was passed on to his associates, who were still at large. They attacked the house again. This time, Marcello foiled their plans, not in the guise of a gravedigger, but by thwarting the criminals once more, literally burying their plans. They managed to steal a few things, but the most valuable items remained in the house. However, Marcello was seriously injured, shot, and taken to the hospital, requiring a blood transfusion. Rosa expressed concern for Marcello's health. "So what's the problem?" she asked. "Blood transfusions are routine now, and people live longer afterward. His blood type is very rare. Unfortunately, we don't have it at the moment. We're looking for it, but time is against us," the doctor replied. Rosa offered, "But I have the same blood type, why not? I'm willing to do anything to save this man." Crying, she waited for the test to see if she could donate blood safely. The doctor who examined her shrugged. "I'm sorry, but where do you plan to donate blood?" "You're pregnant," he said, shocking Rosa. "It's quite obvious now, and it seems you've been in this condition for several months. Didn't you notice before?" Rosa looked at her belly and realized the doctor was right. She compared dates and signs, understanding that Simon was still present in her life in an unexpected way. She was carrying his child. Determined to save Marcello, Rosa found other donors for the blood transfusion. Marcello recovered quickly. Rosa was happy with the success of the operation, but worried about the uncertain future with the man she somehow loved, who had tried to kill her. Her pregnancy became more evident with each passing day, as if the child had been hiding until then. Rosa, distracted by recent events, couldn't monitor her own health. Her thoughts were interrupted by a visit from Helena, who had just recovered from surgery at the same hospital. Helena didn't know about the events involving her son Marcello. When she learned that he had escaped death, she was relieved. She visited her son and, while they were talking, a nurse interrupted to scold Helena for leaving her room without authorization. During the conversation, she mentioned that Rosa was in the hospital, worried about Marcelo's condition. Helena was shocked to learn that Rosa was there, especially when the nurse said that she seemed close to the doctor responsible for her delivery. Helena felt a mix of emotions as she thought about the past, when a wealthy man approached her during a difficult time in her life, resulting in the death of his wife and child during a complicated childbirth, more than 20 years ago. Determined to find Rosa, Helena needed to understand these events. They brought up painful memories from the past, leaving her agitated. Helena had simultaneously worked in his company, while facing a difficult romance that didn't work out, as well as dealing with the loss of her parents and brother, which left her deeply shaken. Her boss approached her with a peculiar request. "Helena, I know your difficulties, and you know mine." He interrupted any gesture of condolence from her. "I have a proposal for you. You're young and healthy, I'm completely alone and need a child to replace the one I lost. I propose that you have a child for me, do you accept?" Helena refused, finding the request completely insane. She even thought her boss might be a bit unbalanced by grief, but he was serious. The conversation continued, and at another meeting, he offered a considerable amount of money for the birth of the child, something Helena really needed at that time. Her parents and brother had died 6 months earlier, leaving her completely alone and in debt after the expensive funeral. In short, she agreed. Thus, her daughter was born, whom Helena only saw during childbirth. By agreement, she wasn't even allowed to nurse the child. She hoped to somehow care for her daughter, not as the boss's wife, but perhaps as a nanny. However, he immediately told her that she would never see the child again and that the secret of her birth had to be kept forever. The father of her daughter was William Maurice. Now, Helena hurried to the attending doctor's office to find her daughter and finally reveal the secret of her birth. Knowing that Rosa's father had passed away, there was nothing more to hide. Rosa needed to know her real mother. The meeting was emotionally intense for both of them. Rosa was especially shocked to discover that Marcelo was actually her brother, even though they had already started developing feelings for each other. She confessed this to Helena, who began to cry again. "Well, I guess I should tell all the secrets. He's not your biological brother, but my adopted son. Yes, that's how it happened. I refused to have a child and ended up adopting another after giving birth to you. I couldn't find a moment of peace. I knew I would never see my little daughter again, and it tortured me. Besides, by fate or karma, I became seriously ill right after your birth, underwent surgery, and the doctor said I couldn't have more children. I even wanted to take my own life. A neighbor, who lived nearby, gave birth to a boy around the same time as I did, Marcelo, and that's what saved me. I took care of him, even nursed him, but then she wanted to send him to an orphanage, so I adopted him." "Is your child Marcelo's?" Helena asked. Rosa cried. "No, it's not his. That's why I didn't go to see Marcelo. I'm ashamed. We fell in love with each other, but at the time I didn't know I was pregnant. And now I'm showing up with a belly, what will he think?" "He won't think anything bad. Think for yourself, I raised someone else's child, so what? A child is a child. Besides, you're young, and you'll have children together." At that moment, Marcelo cautiously walked into the hallway, holding onto the wall. He hadn't heard the conversation, but seeing his mother and his beloved, he smiled broadly. "Are you two conspiring again? I know all your secrets." Then he noticed the changes in Rosa's appearance and fell silent, not knowing what to say. Rosa lowered her head, turned, and began to walk away, ready to leave forever. She felt she had done everything she could. She had no right to impose someone else's child on her beloved. "Wait, what are you doing?" Marcelo and Helena exclaimed at the same time. Rosa stopped, turned. "Forgive me, Marcelo, I think you understand everything, but you need to think about it. I'll accept any decision you make." "Wait." The young man started to go after her, but his mother stopped him. She had something to say to her son, perhaps reflections from the past or perhaps about true love that had led her to call Rosa that very night, saying she couldn't live without her and her child. "But that's not your child," Rosa reminded him. "I wasn't yours either before we met, and now? Now it's different, everything is different. Now you're dearer to me than anyone. But still, this is a child. Why do you think that when I see the baby, I won't be able to love him as much as I love you?" Marcelo tried to explain his feelings. "And will you?" she asked, her voice trembling with happy tears. "Yes," Marcelo smiled. And soon after, Rosa gave birth to their child. He completed his studies, and they got married. This story is a powerful reminder of the importance of living an honest life, valuing the truth, relying on the people we love, and maintaining hope and resilience even in the most difficult moments. The actions we take, both good and bad, have consequences, and it's essential to act with integrity and compassion. If you enjoyed this story, please leave your opinion in the comments below. And, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. A big hug, and see you soon!